Hello everyone, welcome to Talking About Shell Voicings. I am going to explain today what shell voicings are, how to play them, and why you should use them. This is going to be extremely useful for beginners because I definitely recommend starting with these chords. And if you've started with other chords, feel free to keep checking them out, but these are really the foundation of making any other chord rather than having to memorize fingerings. We're interested in how to put chords together and construct them versus I'm going to memorize this chord chart and this chord chart and this chord chart, because the chord charts just take forever. If you don't know how they work, then you can't make your own chords. So shell voicings have root, third, and seventh. It's going to be different combinations depending on which voicings we're using, but the root is always going to be the lowest note with what we're doing right now. We're going to be starting from the third fret for these chords that we're doing, and the first one will have the root on the sixth string. The root is the first scale degree. So we're going to have third fret, nothing. We just want to mute that with the underneath of your index finger. Fourth fret, fourth fret. You can use this fingering, you can use this fingering, you can use this fingering. Fingering doesn't really matter. Every fingering will have an advantage depending on the context of what the chord progression is and what chords you're adding to it, or what notes you're adding to it. The order of scale degrees in this chord is root, seventh, and third. So the root tells us the name of the chord. The seventh and third are taken from the major scale, and this is called a major seventh chord. Now to make the other chords, we have to know the order of what these scale degrees are. So as you play this, you're going to want to remember what the numbers are and try to connect with your ear what this sound is, which is a major seventh. And this sound, which is a major third. It's a tenth if we count how many notes are in between here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But we're reducing this down to what our ear is hearing because we don't talk about chords being built with a tenth when we're talking about the theory of it. It's just more practical to think of that as a third. So to make the next, to make the next chord, we're going to lower the seventh by a half step, which is bringing it back a fret. So we're going to bring middle finger back a fret, and now it's a dominant seventh chord. If somebody's talking about this chord or you're reading it off a page and it's not a theory conversation, you're going to hear this called just G7. It's not, somebody isn't going to say, hey man, play a G dominant seventh chord. Generally they're just going to say play a G7. So this is G7. Notice that the third has not changed. This is still a major chord. If we bring the third back a fret now, so that all of our fingers are on the third fret, this is now a minor seventh chord voicing. Anytime you lower the third to a flat third, if it's spelled that way in the chord, it's a minor chord, no exceptions. So those are the first three chord voicings, and now you can see why if we have this parent chord, we can alter the notes to figure out what the other chords are. Now that you know this pattern, we drop the seventh and leave the third. It's a dominant seventh chord. All you have to know in the other voicings is where's the seventh and where's the third, and all you have to do is drop the seventh, and you don't have to memorize a new dominant seventh fingering. You know how to make it instead. So let's move our root over to the, actually let's do this. Let's put down the major seventh chord again, the one we started with, and move all of our fingers down one fret toward, or one string towards the floor, not one fret. So we're going across one string, across one string, across one string. Now if you play this, play it and see how it sounds. I want you to hear by yourself first. The sound of this is not a major seventh anymore. This sound is definitely not this sound. Now this is worth mentioning because a lot of people don't think about this until a certain point unless somebody tells them. The guitar is tuned in fourths. If we have the E string to the A string, we have E, F, G, A, 4 notes apart. A string to the D string, A, B, C, D, 4 notes. So the guitar is tuned in fourths, but unlike the bass, like if we had a 6-string bass, the guitar has a third between the third string and the second string. The note G on the third string and the note B on the second string is the interval of a third, G, A, B. So that means that we can't just move our fingerings over once we get moving from the third to the second string. Anything that moves from the third to the second string in a chord fingering has to go up one fret because that accommodates for the tuning difference. So when we start with this first major seventh chord again and move it all towards the floor one string, we have to bring the top note up a fret to make it sound the same as the chord voicing that we started with. So the chord voicing for this major 7th chord will be 3rd fret on the 5th string, no 4th string, 4th fret, 5th fret. Now that we've just played this, we can easily construct the other chords because we know where the 7th is. It's the same order as before. Root on the bottom, 7th in the middle, and 3rd on the top. So if we drop the 7th, what's going to happen? Let's drop it, play it. This is now our dominant 7th chord. The bottom note is C in this case, so we'd call it C7. Again, we wouldn't call it C dominant 7th in a normal playing situation, unless we're talking about theory. And now what if we drop the 3rd by 1 fret? Maybe instead of sliding this back, because it gets a little cramped, I'll just use my 3rd finger for this note instead. And now what's it going to be called? It's going to be a minor 7th. So again, if you start with that major chord, drop the 7th, and it's a dominant 7th chord, drop the 3rd, and it's a minor 7th chord. So these voicings are the same. If I play this same voicing that we just did here, and I use our other voicing that we did first for minor 7th, where the fingers go straight across on the same frets, it's the same chord voicing. Different fingering, same chord voicing. This is a big thing on guitar, and once you grasp this concept, it makes constructing chords much easier. We even see that with bar chords and open chords. All of our chords do this, and generally people don't think about it until it's brought to their attention. So whenever you're playing a chord voicing on the bottom strings and you end up moving it across between the 3rd and 2nd strings, just think about, like, how did my fingering change and how did that go up a fret on that string to make the same sound but with a different fingering. Now the last set also has the root on the 5th string. This is not the same voicing that we were using for the other two. So this has a different fingering and a different voicing. So we're still going to start on the the root is going to be on the 5th string on the 3rd fret. And now what we're going to be doing for the major 7th chord, the parent chord here, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 4th fret. The order of these notes is root, root, 3rd, and 7th. So it's not the same order as the other chords. Root, 3rd, 7th. Take a moment and think about how you can make this into a dominant 7th chord. This is the process we want to do when we're making chords, is try to visualize it in your head rather than picking around like, oh, is it this one or this one? We want to kind of think, look at this and visualize it and think, what note do we have to drop to make a dominant 7th chord? Root, 3rd, 7th. So we know the 7th has to go down a fret, and there's our dominant 7th voicing. By extension, drop the 3rd, and it's a minor 7th. And same deal as before, whatever fingering you prefer, major 7th, dominant 7th, minor 7th. The context of these chords, once we add other notes to the chords, it will make more sense why you use certain fingerings. But for now, you just want to be able to do it with whatever fingering you can. Any fingering you can. I mean, all the fingerings are equally useful. So just find one that you like and practice the other ones until they're equally as clean. So that's all of it. It looks like I've trimmed it under 10 minutes, luckily. I made this video just before and it was like 20 minutes long, so I wanted to remake it so that you didn't have to sit through quite as much. Now, what I would do with these chords is also play them in songs. I mean, that's the reason for this. It's going to make it very clear with our ears what we're hearing in the harmony of the song, because we're only hearing those essential parts of the chords. I want to mention for a second, if we had a chord progression, something like D minor 7 flat 5, G7 sharp 5, and C minor 7, then anything after the 7 we can drop because we don't have a 5th in this chord voicing the way we're playing it. So normally, if this was our minor 7 flat 5 voicing, which you don't need to know right now, it's one that you'll obviously learn soon most likely, but we don't need that flat 5th in the chord because we don't have a 5th in the chord. So all you have to do is play the minor 7th voicing that we have. Root 7th, flat 7th, flat 3rd. Same thing with G7 sharp 5. We don't need the sharp 5 because we're not playing a 5th in the chord. So that just turns into G7. And and C minor 7 is the same. Now how about, what if we had C minor 9th as the last chord, or C minor 11 or something? If you have a number higher than 7, you're going to reduce the number back to 7. So G minor 11 would be something like this chord. And yes, it's a cool chord, and I would like to use that chord. It's a nice chord. But for this purpose of getting our fingerings moving at the beginning and hearing the harmony easily and learning tunes and memorizing them and all that, we're going to reduce that 11. It's still going to be C minor, but it's going to be C minor 7 instead of C minor 11. So if you see a 13 or 11 or 9, just take it back down. There is one other chord voicing we need to do. Let's go back to our minor 7th again. We have root, we had the flat 7 and the flat 3rd. The 7th here, the note in the middle, I'm going to bring it down 1 fret more. Let's start at the major 7th, I'm sorry. So if we have major 7th, drop the 7, it's dominant 7, drop the 3rd, it's minor 7. Now drop the 7 1 more fret, it's going to go back to the 2nd fret, and I'm going to rearrange my fingering to accommodate that. This is a diminished 7 chord. A diminished chord has a flat 5 by definition, but this does not have the 5th in the chord. The reason why this is a diminished 7th voicing is because the 7th is lowered an extra half step from the minor 7th. So if this is minor 7th, playing the 3rd string right now, if I drop that 1 more fret, so it's like a double flat or the equivalent of the 6th, that's going to be a diminished 7. And these chords repeat every 3 frets because they're symmetrical. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You hear this a lot in, I mean, all kinds of jazz. You also hear it like in spooky old movies and stuff. So real quickly, let's do that with our other minor 7 voicing. This is the one where we had straight across 3, 3, 3 in terms of the frets. And if you remember, the 7th was in the middle still, so we're going to drop that an extra fret, like that. I'm going to change my fingering just to be more comfortable. 3 frets up and so on. Last one, we had this as our minor 7th chord, root, 3rd, 7th was on top on this one. We drop that an extra fret, and we get... all right, so if you have any questions, let me know. There is a lot more to talk about with this, but I think I just wanted to lay out the concept of using these shell voicings at first. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. If you're interested in jazz guitar, please consider subscribing, because I'm going to be doing at least one of these videos a week. On Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the next thing about memorizing songs based on ear training and chord progressions, and continue that series till we're done. And I did want to put up some beginner stuff too, because I know that there's lots of different ways to learn, and ultimately anything that helps you is good. There's no one right way, but I do feel like there are a lot of more efficient ways, and this is an example of one of them. So thank you for watching. Have a good evening or day wherever you are, and happy practicing. Take care.